It's funny because I went back and forth about doing this. By the way, let me know in the chat if you can hear things okay and if you can hear drums. Okay, just want to make sure that everything is working properly. But yeah, so I went back and forth about doing this particular video because the Tonverk is obviously something new, but I wanted to kind of, give my experience with it and not just, let's talk about the spec sheet. Let's talk about all the cool stuff that it can do, because there's already a bunch of those videos out there, and that's kind of the normal video you see out there from everybody. And I think that one of the things that kind of pushed me to do this video, do the stream today, is because I've been getting a lot of questions about the Tonverk, for one thing. But the second thing is that the information that I've been seeing out there about it is I don't know, interesting. It's not. It makes it seem like it's only one particular thing. And so I wanted to go through kind of my experience about how it's not just one particular thing. So what is that one particular thing? Well, the thing that I keep seeing out there and hearing out there is a whole lot of ambient music. It just feels like this is a machine for ambient music. If you were to just look at what's out there, even the release videos from Elektron, even the demo tracks that come in the machine, everything is very kind of electronica focused and ambient focused and whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. It's yes, we know it can do that. It sounds like it can do that. But then I started thinking like, okay, well, I don't make that kind of music on a regular basis. I mean, I do sometimes for fun, but it's not what I am. It's not what I'm making most of the time. So my question then started to be like, okay, well, is this for me? Is this something that I would use? And so because of that, I started, kind of, when I first got it, my first thing to do was to say, okay, well, what can this do? What is this doing that's different from other stuff? And that's kind of where I kind of wanted to start off with today. And then we'll go into different genres of music and stuff like that, particularly the techno stuff that I like to do, and what's good about this and what's not good about this for techno. I think it's I don't know, it's something to talk about. It's not something to focus on, but it's something to talk about. So first and foremost, the thing that kind of jumped out at me more than anything else is about the machine itself, is that it is unlike anything else that Elektron has made. And so this was something that I was like, okay, so where are they going with this? What's the idea? What's the workflow? What's the new workflow? Why would they make something that's so completely different? And I'm not going to go into the stuff that all of the other videos that I've seen have gone into. So yes, it's a multi-sampling machine. Yes, it can sample. Yes, it can play polyphonically. Yes, it can do ambient stuff. Yes, it can do generative things and lots of effects and all that stuff. Yes, all that stuff. Yes. But what is different about the Tonverk than anything else that's out there? And I think a lot of people, when this came out, they were saying, "Oh, is this going to be the new Octatrack?" And the overwhelming response is no, it's not the new Octatrack. But I would say it has more in common with the Octatrack than I think what a lot of people are saying, because it's not like the Octatrack is. When you first compare it, the first thing you're going to compare it to is sampling. And then you're probably going to compare to performance effects, because, EasyBot's template is kind of like the way everybody's using the Octatrack now. So no, it doesn't sample like the Octatrack, and no, it doesn't do performance effects like the Octatrack. But what's really interesting, I think, about the Tonverk that has kind of struck me in this first kind of messing around with it is that very much like the Octatrack, they're going into this idea of a kind of a modular in a box, meaning that it can be a lot of different things depending on how you choose to use it. Where I think all of the other Elektron devices since the Octatrack, they've kind of gone down this specialist thing, like this is a one-shot drum sampler, this is an FM synth, this is a four-voice analog synth, this is an analog drum machine. And they kind of stuck to, I think for good reason, they stuck to limiting what the machines could do, because that meant that you could have a streamlined workflow that was really easy to understand and for people to get really fast at really quick. And so you had this like the digiboxes in particular have become this really quick workflow that you can just kind of jump into and work through and get stuff laid down really, really quick. What was interesting about the Octatrack, what made it great and what made it break people's brains, I guess, is that it could do a lot of different things and you had to kind of figure out how you want to use it and then set it up, rather than saying, okay, here's the way it's used and here's how you set it up, or here's how you use those things. The Tonverk feels like they're dipping back into that, because this machine has, it doesn't just have one workflow. And I think that's what's everybody's kind of trying to figure out, how am I supposed to use this, rather than what can I use this for? And I think that, I don't know, it feels like that's the way our mentality has gone over the last few years of, tell me what I'm supposed to do. And that's kind of what every device is. This is the way it works. You have to wrap your head around its workflow and then get good at that workflow if you want to use that machine. And the Tonverk feels like a modern version of this kind of flashback or throwback type of machine, which is, it does all these different things. It can be configured in all these different ways. Now go nuts. Figure out how you want to use it, how you want to configure it. And so it just feels like that's where the Tonverk is headed. Now, there's another thing about this that struck me, not just about using the machine, but it's about the kind of the vibe around online comments about the machine is, I think everybody's jumping in saying it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. Okay, yeah, you're right. But we're not talking enough about what it does do that's unique to it and how that could be really creatively inspiring for some people. It's not going to be great for everybody, obviously, but if it's not what you're into using. But if you want a sample chopper, get an Octatrack or get an MPC or whatever. Those are great for that. If nobody would buy a Sub 37 and say, oh, but it doesn't sample. It's like, no, that's not what it's supposed to be. It's an analog monosynth. So it's important to say, like, it's not always good for a machine to do everything all in one box for one thing. And because the more things something does, the more complicated the workflow becomes. And then you end up with these machines like the MC707 or even like the Octatrack. Like, it takes a lot of work to get to know it. So I feel like they're dipping a little bit back into that flexibility, but without going totally over the edge like they did with the Octatrack years ago. So we'll see. But one other thing that's interesting too is this opens up this whole conversation about, should you buy something for what it does today versus what you think it's going to do? And I'm very much in the camp of buy something for what it does today. Say, like, is this cool? But also, it's interesting when you say, oh, this has some openings for the future. This might do other things. But don't ever fall into that idea that you're owed upgrades. Like, yes, this has some bugs and we're owed fixes, right? Those types of firmware upgrades or firmware updates are kind of, Elektron needs to do those for us because we bought something, and if parts of it don't work the way they were supposed to, then that needs to be fixed. But as far as being owed upgrades, I want a new voice, a new engine, a new machine, new effects, more LFOs, whatever. None of that should, I don't think, enter in your mentality about whether or not you buy something today. Like if this is something that you want, get it. And if they add extra stuff, cool, Christmas. Great, I got something new. But it should never be expected. Now, I want to temper that by saying it can be exciting to think about what can something do, or what might it be in the future. And so this will change. This will evolve. There will be new things, just like in the new digiboxes. Like one of the reasons why they came out with the Mark II of the Digitac and the Digitone is because they needed to update the chipset so that they had the room to do stuff, because they're constantly coming up with new ideas and trying to figure out ways to implement those. So we know this is going to go somewhere. So that's exciting and it's cool, as long as we don't fall into the idea of they owe me an upgrade, they owe me an update. You know, it's like, this is a great machine for what it is once they fix a few little bugs that it has, and let that be enough. And then when you get something else, let it be a positive thing, okay? That's just my way of looking at it. And I would encourage you guys to look at it that way, because the other way it becomes pretty negative, where it's like, well, geez, they haven't updated the Syntact in a while. You know, I'm owed an update. It's like, well, no, you're not. You bought a Syntact and it was cool, and it is cool. So let it just be what it is. And don't feel like like you're entitled to something. Okay. So anyway, but there is some interesting stuff that this will probably do. Now, just to change views a little bit, let's take a look at the Tonverk. You like my lovely overhead view that I was able to rig up today? I wanted to make Matthew jealous with my overhead view. Let's see, you can put my face in here too. So there we go. Now you get all of it. So one of the things that I think is really, it's fun always to kind of look at anytime you get an Elektron box. So they've got these 8 parameters on the screen, and they coordinate and coincide with these 8 knobs over here on the side that control them. Anytime there's an empty box, like this one right here, your first thing is like, ooh, there's going to be something new at some point. And that's probably true. I mean, it's a placeholder, so that means something could go there. One thing that's really interesting with the Tonverk is when you go into these buses over here, which we'll talk about in a minute. So you've got a full menu there, and then you've got 8 empty boxes, and 8 empty boxes, and 8 empty boxes, and 4 empty boxes, and then a whole nother full one again. So, I mean, it's not a guarantee that there's going to be something, but something is really interesting is when you look at that and you say, okay, well, they've got placeholders here for something, right? They would have, if that was never going to have something, it probably would have had a different graphic, and it wouldn't have been that type of, oh, there's 8 empty boxes here that could be something. So cool. I mean, maybe that's going to be something. And we'll talk a little bit about the buses and where I think that could get way more interesting over time. And who knows if that's what they're going to do, but with that many open spaces, it just leads me to believe that there might be something that's there. So anyway, that's kind of the way I feel about the philosophy of this thing and what I think their philosophy is. I also think if you look at the marketing materials that came out with this, a lot of what they were mentioning in there was this is the first step down a new path, or like the first step. So they really teased that idea that this platform and this idea of this kind of modular routing platform is going to continue down the road. Like this is going to continue to be a thing, and it's going to develop. Whether, I mean, obviously probably more for this box, because that's, you know, they will do updates at some point. But also, is this going to be something that they're going to expand into other boxes? Will there be other machines that kind of operate in that modular in a box way that we all love about the Octatrack? I mean, that's, if you think about the Octatrack, what makes the Octatrack great is a couple of things. Its sample editing, chopping capabilities are great. But the other thing that's really great about it is the flexibility of routing and it being modular. You can have any track, can be any sort of track. So you can have like a neighbor track or to add more effects, and you can route one through the other, and then you can route those to a different effect or a different recording buffer on a totally different track, and everything becomes kind of like you can send it in all different directions. And I think that this has bits of that, and it looks like, again, from the interface, it looks like those bits have the room to expand. So anyway, there's a lot of options that I think that could be done. In the meantime, there's a lot of options that are already here, and I want to talk about some of my favorite things, some of the things that are not my favorites. But if you have questions or anything like that, chuck them into the chat, and I would be happy to answer. Looks like there's a whole bunch here. What's going on, Mike? Good to see you. Voice and drums sound great. Thanks, Rolly. First track on Tonverk was dub techno. Yeah, great for that. When you can have multiple reverbs and you can have different delays, I think that's an obvious dub techno path. See, if you play mono instruments like guitar, it's hella rad. Yeah, I bet. I mean, being able to sample something in and then have that be polyphonic is pretty sweet. I'd love to see you on TV. We'll put YouTube on your TV. You can do that. Cheers from Netherlands. Hey, yeah, put in here where you're from. I love that, always. Supposedly has some Wi-Fi and Bluetooth chips in there. Cool. That would be interesting. Although I'm always skeptical of audio and MIDI over Wi-Fi, but whatever. I really worry about latency, particularly for live performance, but we'll see. Maybe they can figure out a way to make that work. It will be interesting to see how this device evolves. I agree, totally. Should be expected with this box when they put a card in the box saying, look out for updates. Yeah, I thought that was funny. I did get that. Let me see if I can go over here without ripping my headphones out. Yeah, for anybody who has not gotten this yet, in the packaging, it came with this, which, as you mentioned, is pretty funny. Actually, let me go to a bigger view so you can see this. Yeah, please look out for updates. So I think they knew where they were headed with this, and they knew that it was going to be, again, that goes along with that idea of this is the first step down a new path. Interesting way to get everybody excited as well. So let's see, much love from Salt Lake City. Hey, Salt Lake City, not too far from me. Jake is excited as we all are. Yes, I agree. Looks like a sweet box. It is a sweet box. Yes, I do have it. Oh, this new routing, busing, mixing tech is dying to be on the new mixer box with 4 stereo inputs. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I've been saying that for years that somebody needs to make a mixer, but yeah, we'll see. That would be a great way to go. Give me something to connect all my other electrons to that isn't an Octatrack. Yeah, I think that that's kind of a common need in the market right now. Is we need a mixer that's made for hardware live performance. Like there's a lot of mixers in modular, and then there's kind of DJ mixers. And in between, there's not a lot of interesting stuff out there that's actually performance mixer stuff. But yeah, I mean, I think Elektron, it's definitely a gap in what they do. Everybody's using the Octatrack as a pseudo mixer, but to have a mixer that would be able to have multiple devices, Elektron and other, routed into something and being able to use that as kind of a central performance mixer station, kind of like you would with a DJ mixer, is it's lacking. I wish somebody would make something like that. There's plenty of mixers, there just aren't any performance mixers, and that's what I would love to see. But anyway, let's see. I don't see that as a positive. I don't know what that is referring to. Releasing half-cooked gear is getting old. I think that there's, and again, me personally, but releasing something that is not its end state is not the same as releasing something that's half cooked. It's the idea of, for me, releasing something that's broken. And that's where I said, we're kind of owed bug fixes. So if there's functionality that doesn't work, then yes, I get sick of that too when people release things that are broken. And having been involved in beta testing with a number of companies, I know how much they're working on fixing all of those things. I was just involved in the beta testing of the new the Oxy One Mark II, and we were sending in feedback and fixing bugs right up to the night before the release. And still to this day, they're fixing some bugs, which is, that's kind of a normal thing in any software, especially stuff that gets complicated. But what I'm more referring to is releasing something that doesn't do something that they said it would do. Whereas we can expect or we can want something to do more, but sometimes it's just not possible, or it's not their mission, or it's not where they're going, and maybe it's not a priority to do that particular change or update early on. They'd rather get the product out with the important elements that it has and get people using it, and then they can see what people are really how they're using it and what's important to them. So I think, for me at least personally, I think there's a difference between something being half cooked and something being not its end state, right? I think I love the fact that they're coming up with new creative ways to develop these products over years. But I think also putting them out unbroken is important. And I think this definitely had some issues with some things not working correctly, some things that were broken, if you will. And I'm sure that that's what they're working on right now as far as getting those bugs fixed and getting that sorted. So, hello from Switzerland. Awesome. Where in Switzerland are you? I used to live in Switzerland. Gamers are sick of this now. It's coming common here. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. As I said, I have a little bit of a different perspective on that. Let's see, Circo, what convinced you to get Tonverk? It's a polyphonic multi-sampler, and you mentioned hating sample management, and you mainly make atonal techno. Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to talk about today. Is this is not something that I would generally, like, the main functionality of this being a polyphonic multi-sampler is not something that I would generally care about. So I started to say, is this something that I would use? And that was actually why I ended up getting it, because I said, you know what, I want to try it out and see if it does inspire me to do certain things or work in a certain way, or if there are things that people aren't talking about that are useful for me. And that's definitely the case. And that's what I want to talk about today, because I think there's a lot of cool functionality with this that people aren't discussing, that because instantly this becomes a polyphonic multi-sampler conversation rather than a how would I use this tool to do other stuff conversation. So anyway, hello from Amsterdam. Hey, I will be there in a few weeks. James, what's going on? You coming to ADE? Yes, I am. I will be there. I'm playing on the 22nd, 2 shows, and on the 23rd. And I'm doing a masterclass on the 23rd. If you check out my social media, you can see all about it, but it should be a really fun one. It's going to be with Julia Bondar and some other people, and it's all techno-focused, hardware, live performance focused. So it should be cool. Unknown artist, what's going on? Stoked to see your perspective. Thanks. We'll see if everybody is interested in it by the end of this, but I will definitely give my perspective. Roland MX1 needs a competitor. Yeah, that MX1 was like, it was the right idea with the wrong implementation, I think. I think that they recognized wisely that there was a need for a mixer and just didn't really do it in the most functional way. So, in from Dublin, Ireland. Sweet. So what would you want to see in a performance mixer for live hardware? I would want to see a lot of things. I mean, the way I look at a performance mixer is I look at it from two kind of sets of experience. One is years as a DJ. So I like some of the functionality that you have on a DJ mixer. Having faders for me is essential, which eliminates pretty much everything else that's out there, because most of the hardware mixers now are knob based. So for me, having faders is really important for the performance aspect of it. Multiple sends, having things have the ability to modify the sound per track. So like on a DJ mixer, that's EQ. In a performance mixer, that's a bit less important because the stuff doesn't need to be EQ'd as much. A lot of it can be handled in the individual instrument. With a DJ mixer, you need an EQ because it's your only way to isolate frequencies of completed tracks that are already done. And so EQ for me is less important. When you have different types of gear, being able to have like gain or drive or compressor or something like that per channel, like they have on the Pioneer V10, there's a compressor per channel. That allows you to kind of level your signals coming in so that things work correctly from the mixer standpoint. But for me, the most important thing for a performance mixer is that it's performative, which means it's comfortable. There's enough space. It's big enough, but it's small enough to carry. So yeah, those are all the things I'd be looking for. And then there's like digital versus analog. Digital would mean you could have a bunch of effects. Analog means you could have an analog signal chain and wouldn't have to worry about software bugs, and potentially a better sound depending on how it's made. So yeah, just kind of those are the things. You mean mixers with sequencers? No, I do not mean a mixer with a sequencer. I would not necessarily even, I wouldn't want a mixer with a sequencer. So, hope that Wi-Fi will mean Ableton Link. Maybe, that'd be awesome. Curious about what excites you. What are you hopeful with the Tonverk and exploration? So we'll get into that in a second. Let me get through the questions first, and then I'll jump into the things that excite me, because there are a bunch of things that excite me. And there's some things that are that I would be hopeful to be able to do in the future. What's up, Wabbit? Good to see you. Babies are born half cooked and we give them time. I agree. You know, that doesn't mean that they're not great when they're little. They're just great all along as they develop. And I think that if gear is born without defect, it's already amazing. All right, let's see. I've got the Tonverk and I've had a much better experience with Tonverk than the Torso S4. Had a blast. It's a wonderful box. I can have a ton of fun. Yeah, that's great. Again, not every box is for every person either. That's something to remember. So, thoughts on pairing with the Oxy MK2? Yes, I do have some thoughts about that, and I will chuck those out there in a minute. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to scroll through here. Undecided at the moment. Yeah. Wabbit with the facts. Loving the S4 2.0, but immediately having so much. Yeah, I mean, they're very different devices. I will put that out there. Pairing with the Oxy, I will let you know about. I won't pair it today because I don't have it all set up, but yeah, it would pair really, really, really well with the Oxy. Yeah, I don't think it's as broken or half-baked as it's getting a reputation for either. I think that it is not an end stage. So anyway, let's see, right. I agree with that, but there's a difference in fixing bugs and spending a lot of money on a product that you don't know what features it will have later. You can only speculate. I agree. And that's why I am a proponent of don't ever buy something for what you think it will be. Buy it for what it is today. And the caveat would be what it is today once the bugs are fixed. So, I mean, yes, it's frustrating. You spend a lot of money on something and it has bugs. Those need to be fixed right away in order for it to be valuable. But the value of something should never be based on what it will be in the future. There's a Buddhist saying that is expectation is the root of suffering. So don't expect it will be something, or you'll always be miserable that it wasn't exactly the thing, or it didn't come fast enough, or the other update came first, or whatever. If you don't think this is worth it for what it is today, don't get it. I would say absolutely don't get it. And if you want to wait until it has those things that for you would make it worth it before you get it, you should absolutely do that. I would never say to get something to kind of keep it just in case it turns into a cool thing later. I think if you think it's cool now, get it. And if you don't, don't. Absolutely. Like the name of the new device, which they would integrate more of A to B slider in another device. Yeah, I mean, I think that was one thing, the very first thing everybody's like, oh, it would be so cool if it had a crossfader. And yeah, Although that's something that works really well with the Octatrack, and who knows, maybe they're going to have another device that has that. I would assume because so many people ask for it. But all right, 1 hour from Zurich, nice. I lived in Semeritz and Pontresina. So, also they shouldn't need to see how people use their gear, then add features based on feedback when their forums where people constantly talking about what they want. Yeah, and don't get me wrong, that's not what I think they're doing. I don't think they're waiting to see what people want. I think they prioritize based on forums and feedback and all of that stuff. So they already have lists of, hundreds, if not thousands of features that people would like to see in a device. And then they'll prioritize those based on the needs of the users, because the device will find its users, and then those users might want something totally different, right? Whereas like for me, polyphony is not an important thing, but for some it's going to be crazy important. So having that be more functional for different people would be, different use cases. So I think that it still is a business, so they still have to prioritize what the majority of people are looking for. So having room for small adjustments, additions is great, but it seems more unfinished. Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it. I disagree, but I think that it's, I don't think by any means it's finished. I also don't think that by any means the other devices were finished. I mean, the devices come out without overbridge. They come out, with different functionality that doesn't quite work yet. But they said this will happen or this will come. This one, I think that what they were really going after was polyphonic multisampling and a huge amount of polyphony so that they could make a workflow that could fit into a smaller number of tracks. And then I think also the routing with buses and sends is something that it feels like that's a new direction that they want to go, because that's not something that you see in the other devices. So, and we'll talk about where I think that might go or where I would like to see it. Are they going to stream that class? Oh, I totally skipped something. It's such an amazing time learning, getting into the DTAC 2, but now with the release set up at the Tonverk, be right at my studio. Yeah, of course. Stream what class? I don't know what that question was. Anyway, the class that I'm doing at ADE. I don't think so. I think you got to be there. So come to ADE. It'd be good. Fully agreed about it not being half-baked. People's expectations are insane these days. Yeah, I agree. Get it for what it is, and if it's not what you want, don't get it. Whatever. Stu, what's going on? Personal favorite use of DigiTac 2 is to lean melodic, and it does seem that I'm often fighting it to make that work. I suspect this may become my go-to. Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. So the DigiTac was never meant to be a melodic device. It was designed, tact in Swedish is I think drum, if I'm not wrong. Like that was always designed to be a drum machine, a drum sampler, a one-shot drum sampler. And they have since expanded and given us a whole bunch of free cool stuff that doesn't have anything to do with that. Like, being able to pseudo stretch samples and having some more functionality from a melodic side. So yeah, there is more of it, but like, I think that's a perfect observation, Stu, where you're like, it's supposed to do this and I fight it to make it do the other thing. And for me, that's like saying, my guitar is supposed to sound like a guitar, so I struggle to make it sound like a drum kit. But if I bang on it hard enough, I can make it sound like a drum kit. But it's not really a drum kit, it's still a guitar. And I think that with electronic devices, as soon as it's in a box, everybody's like, well, it should be all the things. And all the things should work all the time. And it's like, designing hardware is a really interesting endeavor. I had a great conversation the last time I was in Berlin with my friend Josta, who coincidentally used to be the CEO for Elektron, and he worked for Native Instruments, and he does all kinds of work with product design for other companies. And that was one of the things we were talking about, is it's like you can make a computer do anything you want, but with hardware, it's about integrating the data processing with the hardware interface, and the hardware interface is the most important part. So making those things work in a way that makes sense to people and is fun to use and adds to their creativity is it's a challenging endeavor. So anyway, where are we at? Oof, a lot of questions. Thank you guys. I appreciate this, by the way. We're getting a wild amount of hate. I agree. And I think it's unjustified. Appreciate the addition of more effects. I don't think I've heard the best example. I agree. And we'll talk about that in a sec. I don't think we'll ever get an Octatrack MK3. We won't. But if you feel like Elektron is making some sort of performance mixer hardware overbridge, that would be great. If they did, I would love it. Tonverk is first back using a new form factor. I agree. That's cool. Expectations are wild. Everyone's an Octatrack 3 or something that fits their own needs. Exactly. Yeah. Which is why this is interesting, because being able to adjust it to your needs is something new. And that's kind of what I wanted to focus on a bit today. It makes sense for them to use something that can act as a USB host. Sure. Struggle with the OT. Find a way to use it suited. Yeah. You got to figure out what you want it to do. Hello there. I own one, having fun, still recommending friends to wait. Yeah, it depends on what you want to do with it. A lot of demos I've seen, people have slammed way too many effects. Yeah, I think that's, again, this is one of those things that you're going to have to exercise some subtlety and caution when you do this. How do the new effects sound? We'll go through those. Price dropped, by the way, about 100 euros. Cool. Yes, I will jam. Don't worry. Honestly, great, interesting set of effects. Cool. External MIDI controller that can access. That would be cool too. I agree. All right. Just gonna keep scrolling really quick. Lots of cool paths. I agree. Tech means beat. That's correct. I knew it wasn't drum, but I knew it had something to do with that. So, it's clearly aimed at the melodic side. Rhythm is secondary. I disagree, and I will show you why in just a second. Dedicated out via bridge for line input. Not sure exactly what that means, but anyway, let's jump into the machine just a little bit, and I'm going to go over the view of the things that I like that are not the things that everybody else is talking about. We're not going to be multi-sampling. We're not even going to be sampling. We're going to be using this as the machine for what it can do, and we're going to talk about routing. We're going to talk about tracks. We're going to talk about the workflow and you know, the pluses and minuses of things and how I'm using them. Maybe it's not what they're supposed to be used for, but it's the way I'm using things. So here's a first example. One of the things that's received a bit of hate is the subtracks, meaning that if you set up a track, like right now, track 1, we have it set up as as what's called a Subtrack machine. So you have source machines, single player, multi, Subtracks, and MIDI, right? So a Subtrack machine, Subtrack, not subtract, a Subtrack machine is a single track that has 8 subtracks on it. So each one of these tracks can be another track on its own. They have their own mutes. Each one of these tracks, if we go here, each one of the tracks has its own trigger parameters, its own source sample, designed very much as one-shots. It has its own filter. There's actually 2 filters, just like there is in the Digitact. You have envelope, you have different filter types, you have amp, envelope, amount. You have an amp envelope, you have an overdrive, pan, volume, and then you can send. The send effects, just so you know, and this is one of the things we'll talk about, like that's getting some hate, but doesn't necessarily, I don't think, merit it, is that the send effects are per track, not per subtrack. So if you were to send reverb, you're sending everything to the reverb. So maybe not the most useful effects, although they can be, and I'll show you how in just a second. And then you've also got 2 different LFOs, and then Yeah, 2 different LFOs that are for the main track and 2 LFOs that are for the subtrack. So you have a ton of flexibility. So one subtrack is basically like a Digitact 1 in its usability, right? Not sample chopping and editing and stuff, but the way you would use it is basically like a one-shot drum machine. So for example, in this particular example that I have right now, so I have a kick, I have some different effects here, or some different, samples, percussive samples. Let me know how the volume is now that we're putting this up. So basically, track 1 is now my whole drum kit. And now each one of these subtracks, so if we go into record mode, this is subtrack 1, subtrack 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So each one has their own sequencer. Each one has 2 filters, multiple LFOs, all of that kind of stuff, all in one subtrack. So being able to take something like a kick drum, and we've got, here's our kick drum pattern, but then we could go in, and if we wanted to add in some things like an extra little note here, we've got probability. We can have this show up, on the 4th time out of 4. We can put something here and have it have, like an 82% probability or whatever. So you've got all of that same kind of Elektron parameter locking ability. So I can go into, for example, if I want to go into the source on this one, I can pitch this up, right? I can go into the filter. I can open the filter and the decay. Let's see when this shows back up again. I'm gonna make this 100% so that so you can see what we're doing here. I can change the amp. I can add distortion just to one step. So that gives you all that kind of individual control over individual steps, just like you would have had in Digitact 1. But all of this right now, all of this is on just this first track. So if I mute that track, I'm muting my whole drum kit, or I can let it play, and then I've got individual mutes per step. And again, each one of these has their own volume, level, all of that stuff. So one track becomes a drum machine. So one of the comments was, it seems like it's more melodic, but not really for drums. And I would disagree. When you talk about different ways that you could use this machine, if you were using this as part of a live setup, this could do all of your percussion. You could have all 8 tracks set up as with Subtracks. So you would have 64 tracks of individual percussion that you could use and bring in and bring out and modify differently and do effects with and all of that stuff. So this could be just a massive percussion machine. So it could go totally to that extreme. Or it could be what you've seen in a lot of the videos that are out there, where it's a polyphonic multi-sampler for making ambient pads that evolve over time. Yeah, it can be that too. So really interesting ways to be able to use something that's getting a lot of hate rather than I think the love that it should get. Let's see. Looking at 1-year-old leak, the 7 different scaling control button. Let's see. Yes, you could do some really cool evolving textural layered stuff as well, which is kind of what I've seen a lot of videos about already. Comparing a Subtrack to a dedicated machine is a little unfair. Yeah, I mean, so the idea of the Subtracks is that it can be one-shot sample player, okay, with parameter locking and individual sequencers and all those different things that I was talking about as far as, being able to change pitch, and you've got multiple LFOs, and you can do all sorts of things interesting. And that's all just on one track. And you can put those on every single track if you wanted to. So you've got 8 tracks that could potentially be 64 one-shot tracks. So it could be the largest one-shot drum sequencing drum machine ever, right? So that's one thing. Then you have the ability to do other types of tracks. So if we go to track 2 here, what did I remember what I put on here? Oh, that's way. Yeah, so this is kind of your traditional tonal. I'm going to turn these effects down a bit so you can kind of hear just the sound itself. So if there's something that you want to affect separately, you can just put it onto a separate track. Whereas again, if we go back to our drum tracks here, these send effects on the drums, there's not effects per subtrack, there's send effects per main track. So if I was to send, let's see, so if I was to send reverb, it would reverb the whole thing. Same thing with delays. Now, in some cases, you'd be like, oh yeah, well, that's not very usable. Sure, if you're using it as a whole drum kit. However, it can be. One of the things with reverb that's cool is you can kind of use it to put things into a space. So if you put a tiny bit of reverb, now it feels like you have a drum kit that's all in the same room. Right? The reverb isn't so much a sound design tool as it is that idea of reverb to define a space, right? Same thing with delay. So if you want something to have a little bit more of a groove, you can add a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of delay, and it'll delay all of the things a little tiny bit. So there are ways to use this, right? And again, it's not exactly the way that you would use it in another machine. And I think that's what's really, for me, one of the most interesting bits about it. Now, something else is the routing. So let's talk about the routing for just a second. And this is where this machine starts to get really interesting. So you have 4 different buses, okay, that each one of the buses you can put 2 effects on. And like I said, there's a lot of empty spaces. So I'm assuming these buses are going to have some other stuff. So if you were to set up one bus as a reverb and one bus as a delay, you can then route individual tracks. So if we take all of these off, and let's say we want to route, so subtrack 1, let's say we want to route this to bus 1, and then we want to take bus 1 and we want to use this to add delay. And this is just going to put delay on the kick now. And now if we set up bus 2 as a reverb, and then we go back to our subtracks here, and we say, okay, let's take all of those cymbals and let's send those to bus 2. So anyway, being able to send things out to different buses is really interesting. Now, I'm going to correct myself. I don't think I am sending out each individual. I think that is the whole thing. So forget about that as far as sending individuals, but you can send whole tracks. Now, what's cool with this too is those buses then become the kind of a cheap version, or like I don't want to make it sound bad, like a modern version of what the Octatrack can do with neighbor tracks. So if you've got something that is that's like a regular audio track, you've got 2 effects on it, then you can have a neighbor track with 2 more effects on it. So with this, if we have, let's say we've got our this one that we were doing here with, let's just put a couple of things on here. So let's say we've got this this synth sound. Right here we've got our regular delay and reverb. But now let's say we want to route this to bus 1, and let's go back to bus 1. Yeah, so let's say on bus 1, we want this one to have a different type of delay, or we want this to have, I don't know, a warble. Now we can start to add all right, so again, kind of like in the Octatrack where you can have a regular track and a neighbor track, and then you can send one into the other. It doubles the amount of effects you have. This has something as well. So this has that same thing as well. So you've got send effects in the first one, then you've got buses, and then you can also send it to a send track, which can be differing amounts of the send effects that you have. So this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about being able to set this up in ways that work for you. There's not just one way to set up the effects. And that's one of the reasons why they added in a whole bunch of different effects, is the ability to then go in and add them more to each individual bus or send or whatever. Then there's something else, just real quick, is that on track 16, which is, and actually, sorry, not track 16, but 16, if you hold down, hold down track and go to 16, this is your mix track. And the mix track also has an effect, and you can decide which effect that you want that to be. So for example, one of the things that I've been kind of complaining about for years is that it's really hard to play any individual Elektron box by itself as a performance device, because you don't have really performance effects other than the Octatrack, which is why you see so many people going through the Octatrack in order to get in order to be able to use it to perform. So with this one, you only get one for now. Who knows, maybe they'll add more, but for now, the mix track, which is your main mix, and you can route things to the mix or not, which is cool. This has one effect. So in this case, I have it set up to be a high pass filter because I like to use high pass filters when I perform. So if we're playing all of the tracks that we have going here, then if you go to your track 16, then you can high pass your entire mix, which you never used to be able to do. So being able to have a mix effect that you can set up as a high pass filter so that you can use like that. And you can change that effect as well. So if you wanted to add reverb on your whole mix and pull out your kick and have it be a buildup, you can do that. There's a lot of switching because it's only one effect on the main. But again, looking at things that it does that other devices don't do, at least it has an effect on the main. Like even with the Octatrack, you have to make one of the tracks the main track in order to have an effect on it. So then instead of having 8 tracks, you only have 7 tracks plus the main. And so this, they kind of are going in a different direction. This, you can have 8 tracks plus the main and the buses and the sends, and each one of the tracks can have subtracks. So again, depending on how you want to use it, you can build a workflow that works for you instead of saying, oh, okay, here's the workflow, and so you have to do it. Right? So it's one of those things that is, that again, unique about this, and I don't feel like enough people are chatting about it. So let's go through here and see what we got. Where are we at? That started was like 4 Digitac 2, but nope, not at all. Can't have different chops per Subtrack. can't have a dedicated effect settings. Correct on the dedicated effect settings, but you are setting up each Subtrack as its own sample. So if you were to do the old school way and you load and you just have different samples that you were going to put in there, yeah, then you could have different things or different samples per step. But you can't, you're correct that you can't have different chops, but this isn't even set up to chop. So, I mean, and I don't want to say yet because I assume that that will come at some point, but who knows? If it doesn't, I'm trying to use it as it is to see how I would use it as it is. Easily reset the per step settings if you get lost in sound design. Yeah, so one of the things that you can do on all the Elektron machines is like if you're on this step here and you've got, well, whatever, let's say you change the pitch as a parameter lock. Let's say you do that, but you want to go back to where it was originally, you can just press it. Oh, it's not working with this one. Yeah, so it doesn't work with pitch, sorry, I forgot about that. But with, like, for example, if you wanted to change the length of the sample or the velocity, you can just press down on that and it will change back to what it was before. So it is possible to do that. There's not a way, I don't think, to reset all of them, but there might be. I mean, the easiest way I know to reset all of them is to just take the step off and put it back on again, and then they're all gone. So that's a quick, easy way to do it. All respect due, it really depends on how deep you want to program drums. For me, it's insufficient. Yeah, I mean, it all depends on how you want to program drums. You're exactly correct. If you're looking for one drum kit that does everything, yeah, you don't have a lot of flexibility in the individual steps here. The fact that you can have 8 times 8 of those one shots means that you could go really super into detail if you wanted to. But again, I don't think that this is a drum machine. I'm showing that it can be a drum machine. You can use it for drums. And if you want, again, to use something as an all-in-one box, or one of the things I love to do is if I'm just writing on one box and jamming around on one box, I love to be able to have a drum kit so that I can just kind of have some drums in there while I'm writing a bass line, while I'm writing, you know, a percussion part or something on a different track. And then I can use those in a different way later where I probably take the drums out and I'm using my modular or I'm using the analog rhythm or something like that. So I think that, again, it can, but it's not necessarily specifically what it's for. But I wanted to bring up that that's something that not enough people, I think, are talking about. Scared to watch your take on this, you might convince me. Well, I don't want to convince anyone that they need it. I'm trying to let you know what I think about it, like me personally. But what's my good workflow is not necessarily your good workflow. You can P-lock it to a specific step. Yes, you can. If you want only the kick to get delayed. Yes, as long as the kick's the only thing on that step, you can. Yes, the new effects are very cool. Hype, okay. Thought about it that way, yeah. Tonverk's great if you don't want to do what you can with the other boxes and embrace its power areas. Tonal exploration, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely its strength is definitely polyphonic multi-sampling. The reason I'm not going into that is because that's what everybody else has been talking about. Yes, the buses have sequencers, yes, which is cool. You can set sends per step, yes. Was burned by the Poly and Play to Play Plus in 18 months. Add a single synth engine to the original. Yeah, that was a little sketchy. I'll be the first to say. I was not a huge fan of how they did that. That was an example of the first one shouldn't have come out if the second one was that close. Because these things don't get developed in a few months. These things are years and years in development before we ever see them. So they had to know that the Play Plus was coming out. So that was weird. They could have put out the Play Plus for just on its own and then upgraded it, but they didn't. So that was a little odd. Anyway. The difference, I think, with this and that is that one when the new one came out, it was the same as the old one, but with new capabilities, and you couldn't update the old one. And it was very short time after. This, I think, is kind of the opposite. This one, they're coming out with something that has a ton of space to potentially do other things down the road. And they said, here as it is today, this is a very useful tool for a lot of people. And then we can then add to it down the line without having to make them buy a whole other device and making this one obsolete, I think. Yeah. I have 4 Elektron boxes, and had they added any of the new effects? Well, being ignored in updates. So I will let you know one thing that I do know about Elektron, because I have talked to these guys quite a lot. The team that does all of their software work is, I think, 10 people. And that's software work for all of their devices that they have. So that's, updates and changes. Anytime, Ableton updates or Logic updates or whatever, they have to update Overbridge. They're developing new products, and they're servicing bugs and issues in the old products, and they're doing updates in the old products to try to get them to have whatever new functionality. So one thing that I would mention, and this is something that I've seen Elektron do a lot, and it feels like they're doing here, it was never more obvious than with the latest iteration of the Digiboxes. They will, as they're working on one device, when they have new things that they can update, they'll put it in that new device. And then when they get to the update on the next devices, they'll put it into those as well. So you saw a bunch of stuff that came out with the DTAC 2 that was all new things, and then they put that into the D-Tone 2. So things will, the Subtrack comes out, then the new ones come out with some of the new things that it has. So they do that a bunch, where because they're working the team will work on a project at a time. So I'm sure they were all working on getting out Tonverk. Then now they're going to go back into the next firmware update of whatever's next in line. I would assume it's probably the Subtrack, just because that's the one that has been updated the least recently. But then they'll all work on that. Then they'll all work on the next one. Then they'll all work on the next one. So it's only 10 people. And so there's a lot of work that they're doing. Not to make excuses for them, but I know that that's the answer to that question. So that is where they work. Let's see. If I sample Hydrosynth, for example, I have an 8-part multi-timbral Hydrosynth. Yes, you do. And what's interesting is that you could then put that sample on 8 different tracks, and each one of those is 8-note polyphonic. Then you have your 8-note multi-timbrality with 8 notes of polyphony per timbre. So it gets wild really fast with the amounts that it has. So I would say that's, again, I'm not going to go down the polyphonic multi-sampling rabbit hole, because that's what this is specifically designed to be, and it's what everybody's been talking about with this. But that's what's really interesting with this, is being able to polyphonically multi-sample synths with multiple layers of velocity as well. So if your synth patch has changes that are done by velocity, you can do your auto sample to include multiple velocities per sample, which is cool too. And then you can play that as a polyphonic synth and put it on multiple tracks. So if you could take something that's normally monophonic and make it polyphonic, you can take something that's normally polyphonic and make it super polyphonic. But yeah, that's definitely what the big main thing is with this. What else? Studios, a conference Subtrack would change a lot. The ability to choose effects on the digis would be great. Yeah. It would be. One thing that I will let you guys know, and this was something that I got as an answer from the Elektron guys when I was asking them about a feature that I would love to see on the Subtrack. One thing not to forget is that a lot of the routing inside the Subtrack is analog. So like inputs, outputs, where those are sent and stuff are analog paths. They do have some digital things, like some of the effects have a digital path. So changing up things with the effects is going to be possible, but there's certain things that won't necessarily be possible because of the way the analog stuff is routed. And so think about what that might look like. You know, you're gaining analog synth power in the Syntact, but because of that, you lose quite a bit of the flexibility of being able to modify things, because you can't then go in and change those hardwired routings of certain things. So, yeah. Yeah, I'll restate what I said at the beginning as far as firmware updates. I don't feel like we're owed anything. I feel like we buy things. I bought this for what it is. That's it. And if I get something amazing, it's Christmas, but they don't owe me an update. They owe me bug fixes. So things that if I was sold something and it doesn't work the way I was sold it, that is something that we're owed. They have to make it what they promised that it would be. But if this isn't what you're into as it is today, you definitely shouldn't buy it. And if you want to wait, 2 years, 3 years until it's got a whole bunch of different updates and upgrades and things and say, now it's worth it, now I'm going to buy it. Then the next thing we hear is people get pissed then because, oh, I just bought it and then they came out with a Mark II. It's like, well, yeah, because things evolve over time. And what we want is, as musicians, as artists, we want to be able to use the thing over those years. I don't want to wait 3 years for them to put this out as another thing. I want to use this for 3 years and then maybe it becomes something else, or maybe it doesn't ever at all. But in the meantime, I've had 3 years of making music on this thing. So anyway, need a multi-synth. I would grab a Waldorf or something like that. Yeah, I agree. I think having things to take on the go is great. So like if you have big synths, like let's say you have a Polybrute or you have a Prophet or you have something like that, and you want to be able to have those sounds in a live show and you want to be able to take them with you, being able to multi-sample those in here is really cool. I mean, and take everything with you. The other thing too is that this can do that auto multi-sampling via USB from VSTs. So let's say you've got, some really cool serum patches or whatever that you want to be able to take live and you don't want to bring a computer, you can multi-sample those patches into here with different velocities and everything, and then you can take those with you. So it's, again, something else that the other devices just don't do. So anyway. Can't you just use the perform mode? You can. The perform mode it's kind of like on the other boxes where you like save a state and then you reload that state. So yes, you just have to remember to go into perform mode before you change anything, and then you come back out of perform mode and it changes everything. So yes, you can, but it's a little bit different because you're not. I think what they were asking about as far as resetting is that they wanted to explore and then be able to get back to where they were. And you can do that definitely with the perform mode. But if you like where you explore to, then you need to save that as something new at that point. So, let's see here. Do you have enough of an overview in your project? I'm not sure what you mean by that. But let me know what you mean, and I'll answer that. Fully agree about being able to use boxes. The idea to later in Jonas' department, having several boxes now, tend to only use one at a time. Yeah, and again, everybody's going to have their own workflow, and this is not going to be a good machine for everybody, right? And the reason why, again, I mentioned the reason why I got this is because I wanted to see if it was a good machine for me. I didn't get this like, ooh, this is the thing. Now everything else is gone. I'm going to use this one box. For me, I wanted to be able to get it, explore, see if it gave me creative new ways to do things that I can't already do with other gear, which it does 100% already the way it is today. So So, an hour in and no ambient. Yeah, there's not going to be any ambient. That's not what this is about. That's what all the other videos are about. Let's see. Important precision. Elektron will gain as all brands with more transparency. It would sure shut down a lot of. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Something tells me that no matter how much transparency these companies have, people still are going to think they're out to get them. And I think that also there's a lot of these companies, I think Elektron gets this probably as bad as anybody. There's people that think that this is some massive company and it's like this corporate overlord like Behringer or Korg or Roland or some huge company. And Elektron is a tiny company. Like I think I've met at least 80% of the executives of the company. And like I said, the teams that are working on stuff are really, really small. And so it's still, even though they've done a good job of becoming a kind of a household name, it's still very much a small boutique company. This isn't like, some giant corporation somewhere. This is still, it's still a small group of folks making these things. How do you like the size of the new box? Seems they've alluded to this box being a size format for future products. Digiboxes can feel a bit cramped. Yeah, I mean, I think that they had to do it this size in order to include the keyboard. Because if you look just like the way the buttons are set up, if it was this much smaller, like a Digitact, then they'd move all these buttons down and it would be able to fit there. And I think they just put it there just to have the keyboard. I think it's cool. I like that it fits with the other boxes. I also like that it's, for me, like the biggest functional size to travel with and gig with for an individual box, if it's going to be part of a broader setup, is like Octatrack size or like, Analog Rhythm Mark I. Like that box size, I think is, for me personally, that's the biggest portable size. Everything beyond that feels a lot less portable. So this being slightly smaller, I think is great. And it still feels portable, but it gives you room to do other stuff. And yeah, they could be going other directions with this. Like you said, who knows? They might have a mixture. They might have an Octatrack Mark III. They might have all kinds of things that might fit really well into something that's this size. So who knows? I think that one thing that they did recently that really kind of helped was switching over to the different size buttons for the step sequencer. Instead of having square, having these like little chiclet sized ones, made it so they could make it much shorter, like much, not as wide. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. Narrower, that's the word I was looking for. So that you can still fit 16 steps across and not need that extra little bit the Octatrack takes up. So I like it. I also like, in the Digitact how they're stacked, but again, this feels very, I would rather have 16 across and have them be smaller than have them be 2 stacks of 8 and have them be larger, but that's me personally. I like being able to see 16 steps across. I think it's a much clearer layout. And maybe that's just retro 909 version of me, but yeah, that's what I like. Voice of Reason, thanks. Ghostface, hello. You sampled contact libraries. Yeah, I think that's a great use for this. I mean, that's another thing, being that I think isn't getting enough kind of hype or chat, is the fact that this is a way to take things, on the go, to be able to use things live. I heard somebody say the other day, this is a sound design box and not a live performance box. And you get a hard disagree from me, because I feel like this is made for live performance. If you're performing tracks that you've produced in a DAW and you want to be able to take those sounds and actually play them and perform them live rather than just reassembling stems, being able to multi-sample in VSTs into this so that you can then take those sounds out in a portable way, and play them live without a computer, I think is a big deal. All right. Auto sample YouTube clips. You did just state that they're pitching it as a platform that it will get updates. Yes. She'll use them for what they do now and enjoy it, but the devices are marketed with future updates in mind. Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's a difference between saying we can update this and saying you should expect XYZ updates. This has space. It's a new platform. It can get bigger. It can get more interesting. Absolutely. And so I think that they're definitely saying this is the first step down a new path, which is cool. But again, I don't think that should change the fact that we're buying these devices for what they are today, and I'm not buying this as a future thing. I'm buying this as this is what it is today, and it's useful today, and I'm enjoying it, having a great time with it. So for me, it's a techno machine. Transwork, yeah, exactly. Overview question. One big issue I have with Elektron is that we don't have an overview of what we do or have done on a project. Manageable on the digis, but the Tonverk with its Subtracks can become quickly hard. So are you talking about like a song mode overview of something? Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. In that this doesn't have the best, or none of the Elektron devices are the best at having like an overview of your song mode. Like you would get, let's say if you were using an external sequencer like the Oxy One, you can say, I want, these patterns, then these, then these, then these, and you can look at it and see your whole track all out in one. This doesn't really have that. I was just trying to check in the song mode, and it doesn't really have that either. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Their Elektrons aren't the best for that. Although I know people that are writing full tracks in them. I mean, just watch any of EasyBot's things, and he's doing all of his stuff where he's writing them here. So it is possible to keep track, but it doesn't look as functional as it does in other devices, right? Where you can see an overview of a track. But again, small screen, low resolution. So that's the trade-off. But yes, I agree with you completely. We get an update on Monday, and next month more features. Cool. Granulator coming. Nice. Sweet. But again, for me, that's a plus. I want the bugs fixed, and then whatever. Then they can take their time. Still don't understand why they put the keyboard on the left compared to the A4. I just think everybody's used to all of these buttons being the same, and being where they are, just because this is the way it is kind of on all of these boxes. And so they needed to put it somewhere. If you had like the page and fill and yes and no and the arrows, if you swap those over to here, that would be also odd. But I get what you mean. But again, I don't know that this is necessarily supposed to be really played. This is a functional thing for entering in notes or chords or whatever. But being able to have an external controller connected to this as a proper MIDI controller, if you wanted to actually use a keyboard, I think is definitely the way to go, for sure. At Z for Subtracks. I don't know what that means, but I love those Subtracks. I do too. It's like 8 drum machines in one machine. Yeah, I see it kind of the same way. Like if it's a one-shot drum machine for laying down some ideas, getting patterns out there, all that stuff. I mean, I love having that all be able to be on one track. Where, I think back to just a couple of years ago when we had the Digitone, if you wanted to do drums, you had to use multiple tracks if you wanted 2 things to hit on one step, or you could parameter lock different sounds to each step. But then when you wanted 2 on one, you had to micro time one back from a step ahead or forward from a step behind. It was like this super convoluted thing. Now I can just go in and lay down drum tracks, which I think is for me, very functional. Right? So yeah, let's see. Elektron's a great company. Sure, they're not out to get me, but they're definitely out to get my money. So I just want them to be better at that. Yeah, one thing that I always try to caution people, and this is about Elektron in person. And just so you know, I don't work with Elektron. I think I've gotten one thing from them, and that was the Heat Plus effects, because it was to test it out. But everything else I've gotten on my own. And the thing with Elektron is I think that we look at things too much as all-in-one boxes, because that's what other companies do, right? That's what MPC does, Kai does with the MPC. But with the Elektron boxes, they're sequencers first. Elektron is a sequencer company. They make a really amazing sequencer that does really cool things that other sequencers don't do. And then they attach different things to it for people who want to use that sequencer in different ways. So if you want to use the sequencer as a one-shot drum machine, you get the Digitact. If you want to use that sequencer with a polyphonic FM synth, you get a Digitone. If you want to use that sequencer with a multi-sampled, multi-polyphonic instrument, you get the Tonverk. But what you're really getting is a sequencer. And then you're attaching other things to it. So you just have to figure out which things you want to use the sequencer with. And that becomes the thing that you get. So, let's see. FL Studio patios and those subtracks. Yeah, I agree. Thoughts on it still lacking velocity sensitivity? Hey, Vincent, what's going on? Greetings. For some people, that's a huge deal. For me, I couldn't care less. Because again, I'm not a keyboard player. So velocity sensitivity for me means nothing. However, the thing that does mean something with velocity sensitivity, this already does. So if you multi-sample, you can sample each note with multiple layers of velocity. So let's say a note that's pressed soft impacts the settings of that patch in one way, and then with more velocity, those settings are maybe more dramatic. So you can multi-sample all of those things, and then you can parameter lock with velocity, and it gives you additional sound shaping capabilities. I'm not a keyboard player. I am a horrific keyboard player. So if I had a, velocity sensitive polyphonic keyboard, I wouldn't use this machine any better than if I didn't. Now, from what I understand, and I haven't, check me if I'm wrong in the comments, but from what I understand, this, when you're using an external keyboard, you can take advantage of the velocity sensitivity, but you just can't do it with this internal keyboard. So again, I've never felt like these were meant to be played. On my Analog 4, I never felt like it was meant to be played either. It's meant to be used to give you a reference for where the notes are, but not to be able to be played like a piano, I guess. But that's just me. Same for me, 16 way superior to 2 times 8. Yeah, I agree. Velocity transform menu, they're hoping improves, great. 100% live machine, totally agree. They said this is the beginning in their marketing. Should be an interesting 6 months to see how far they get. I would suggest, again, in the most respectful way, to check the expectation, because I don't think when they say this is the beginning, that means, man, in 6 months, this is going to be a totally different machine. What I think that means is this is the beginning of a long life of this machine. So if you get this today, this will still be viable with a whole bunch of new things 3, 5, 7 years from now, like the Octatrack has stayed viable over all of that time. So I think that this is the beginning of this platform's life, and it's going to evolve over years into all kinds of cool and interesting things. 6 months, I would be hesitant to expect that in 6 months it's going to be totally different, because normally, again, like I mentioned, they have a small team. So normally what they'll do is they'll get this out. The whole team will then work on fixing all of the bug fixes. They may add in a couple of things that were almost there when they released, but not a whole bunch of other things. And then they're going to shift all that focus to going back to, let's do the Syntact, and then let's go back and do the Digitact 2, and let's go back and do whatever. So, be careful with too much expectation, because if everybody's expecting and hoping for something else, the same person that will be, it'll be a different person that's upset that this doesn't get updated in 6 months than would be upset if their Syntact didn't get an update either. And they need to prioritize. And I think they try to keep them in a rotation from what I understand. So, let's see, overview, not necessarily song mode or structure, but for example, if I want to know if this track is used, I need to see it flashing or hit record to see the notes. or what I did. Yeah, I get what you mean. They have included over the years some interesting stuff. So like if you go in and you do like different parameter locks on different things, let's just lock a whole bunch of stuff on different pages. Then what they've done now is when you press this, you know which things have parameter locks on them. So then you can go into filter and you're like, oh, it was this one and this one, but I want to take those off. So now that doesn't show up red when I press this. So there are some little things like that, but I agree, there's not a really good quality overview. Something else that I noticed too with the Subtracks, sorry, I'm still getting used to the terminology, with the Subtracks is that you can go in and see where different things are within the Subtracks. So you can see which ones are being used and see what's on them. But you're right, it's still a matter of flipping back and forth between going into record mode to being able to see that. Yeah, that is definitely part of the workflow. Not sure this has already been discussed, but how you'll be using the Tonverk. What role will this play? I don't know yet. I'm still learning it and trying to figure it out. But I will let you know. I could see this being one device that goes with me along with my modular because it can do so many different things and it's kind of really creative. I think in the future that I may try to do at some point, just because I haven't done it in a while and I miss it on some level, I may try to do a non-modular live rig and have this be part of that. And as soon as I can figure out what to do as far as mixing goes, make a mixer. And then, you know, some of the other Elektron boxes and stuff, because I do miss this and do miss this workflow. So we'll see. But for right now, I'm trying to learn it because it's got so many possibilities. I'm trying to learn what I might want to do with it. That's where I'm at. What's up, Craig? How's it going? I love that latest clip that you posted. That sounded great, by the way. No big deal when you work on the project, but if you open the project 6 months, yeah, I totally agree. Need to re-explore what you did. I think that it isn't worse than it is on the others. It's exactly the same. You know, like if you go to track 1, now you're on the Subtracks, and so you can kind of see where you are on the Subtracks. And then when you go to record mode on a Subtrack, that takes you there and it takes you to the other ones. So it's very much as if these 8 are like a Digitact 1, and then this is like your regular full device. It's kind of what it feels like from a workflow standpoint. Let's see, talking about the sequencer, they added stuff about my KeyStep Pro for random trigs, not rearrange, etc. Yeah, so they have added stuff in the sequencers over time. One of the things that I love that they've added to, let's see if it's on a full blown one here. So you've got, they split up the probability and the conditions. That used to always be one thing. Now you can have things that have a probability and a condition. So you can have it play 30% of the time and once out of every 4 times through or whatever. So splitting those was huge. On the Digitact and Digitone, they also split out the fill, not fill functions, which is pretty cool. In this one, I haven't explored this yet, but when you go to the fill mode here, you have the ability to do momentary or latching fills, which is great. That's something that, again, you talk about what could make its way into other devices. That's a software thing, and there's already fill functionality and everything, so there's no reason why the Digitact 2 and the Digitone 2 shouldn't get momentary or latching fill selection, right? That's the kind of thing that's like, okay, this got it first because it's developed now and it's ready to go. So it comes out in the new device, but then it will probably be in updates for the other devices, I would assume, just because it's there and it's a digital thing already. So, yeah, so they are always adding stuff even to their sequencer, which is very cool. At this point, the Elektron lineup, which box is the best suited for live jamming outside of the Octatrack? I think they all are, but for different reasons. You know, like if you're a synth person, Digitone 2 is amazing. If you're a sample person, the Digitact 2 is amazing. If you're a sample chopper, and you want to really kind of mangle and chop samples, then it's the Octatrack. If you're looking for analog synths, then it's the Analog 4 or the Syntac. So again, this goes back to that thing, like they're not trying to make one box for everybody. They're trying to make a box for every individual. So it's like, okay, well, this one's for me, this one's not, this one's for me. So one thing you'll notice, you haven't seen the Syntac in my videos for a while because I sold it. Because I wasn't using it. I found that I had what I needed for other things. Doesn't mean it's a bad box. It just wasn't the right one for me. Whereas I still have my Digitact. Now I have the Tonverk and the Digitone because they're all amazing. And they each does something unique and different. But yeah, it all comes down to your workflow. Okay. Have the Analog Rhythm 2, need a good live jamming sampler or instrument to partner with it. Hopefully to choose one of the boxes I already own. Syntac, Tonverk, or Digitact. I mean, for me, if I'm ever going to recommend to somebody to get their first Elektron box, I usually recommend the Digitact because that's kind of, it's the easiest one. You don't have to get too in depth into the FM synthesis of the Digitone. It's got all the new features. It can be all the things, and it's very quick to learn. So the Digitact is always kind of the one that I recommend to people for their first one, and then after that, kind of go into whatever's your specialty preference. Syntac, having real engines allows more expression. The control all works best in Syntac since all machines are kind of laid out the same. Yeah, I mean, Syntac's cool. Like I said, it's the one I sold recently, but again, that doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, it didn't fit my workflow, but maybe it's perfect for your workflow. And that's, for me, what I think is great about these devices. And with the Tonverk, I got it because I wanted to evaluate if it was good for my workflow. And we'll see. I mean, as of right now, I think it's a lot of fun and I'm having a great time with it. But yeah, we'll see where it ends up going to. Analog rhythm signal into Tonverk. Yeah, exactly. All new effects. Yeah, I mean, Syntac doesn't have a sampler, sure. And that's, if you need a sampler, then don't get a Syntac. Ghost, I know what that is. Kind of scared it would be like Syntac, which opened the way, but the new Digitact made things the right way. Yeah, see, Digitact has an advantage over Syntac in that it's all digital, so they can do a lot of different things that they can't do in the Syntac because it's analog, or because it has a lot of analog routing. So, yeah. Granulator, that'd be cool. Granulator would be sweet. No, so one thing we didn't talk about, and I'll just throw this out there. I get asked what I would like to see in this. For me, the biggest thing for me that would be a game changer and make me just say, this is absolutely, the new machine, is if this could time stretch like the Octatrack. Being able to put in longer samples and time stretch them is really important for me, for my workflow and my live sets. And this not being able to do that means that this won't replace the black box. This won't go into my live sets and be that thing. But if it could do that, if it got to the point where you could have like the Octatrack, you could put long samples in there and it would have a good quality time stretch, unlike the one that's in the Digitact 2, then it would be awesome. But it doesn't have that yet. The other thing that I would love to see that I would assume this will get at some point is being able to route between buses. So to be able to, much like you can do on the Octatrack, audio neighbor, neighbor, neighbor. So then each neighbor gives you 2 more effects. If you could route this into bus 1 to bus 2 to bus 3 to bus 4, then you could have all sorts of different effects. And if you had a MIDI controller that you had a bunch of controls of those effects, it would allow you to use them all without ever having to change your layout or your setup. So that for me would be, those for me would be the 2 big things that I would love to see: time stretching and bus routing one into the other. Tonverk sounding better as all older Elektron's new software. Yeah, exactly. It's running separate signals into my baby Sherry. Yeah, I wish that somebody would come up with something like that that wasn't just knobs, that had faders on it, but whatever. Let's see here. Tonverk does sound ridiculously good. Yeah, I mean it's an amazing machine. It's a different, unique, new thing. It's not going to be for everybody, but I'm not here to say that, you know, like, oh, they suck because they're whatever. It's great, and I think it's really interesting, and I really like it just for what it is today. Second in, big and tone. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, my thing keeps resetting here. Had a Digatone 2, sounded way too thin. Interesting. I did not have that experience with the Digatone 2 at all. For me, having heard it on some big sound systems, playing it live, it is a huge fat sound. And being able to put things through master overdrive makes all the difference. That's one of the things that makes the rhythm so good. And with the Digatone 2 having that now, was amazing. The machine is so much fun for those who really enjoy writing progressions. Yes, agree. Not yet heard a bad sounding Elektron box. I agree. Quality of the sound effects is top quality. Yeah, these new effects are really cool. They're interesting. It's nice to have, like, the older kind of delay reverb, they sounded fine. There was nothing wrong with them, but these ones sound great. Like, and not only great quality, but they sound interesting and creative, which is cool. Wish the LFO could control Euclidean parameters on the boxes. Yeah, maybe someday. The thing with Euclidean, it depends on which parameters you want to do, but something that people forget about Euclidean sequencing is that Euclidean sequencing is math. So you can't, I mean, you can adjust the number of steps, but you can't, you know, move things and move the steps to a different place or things like that, because it messes up the math. So if that makes sense. Electronics machines are all super powered in their own way. Just watched a friend of mine play a face melting set on the cycles. Yeah, they're all great. For me, it's Syntakt and Tonverk versus Analog Rhythm 2 and Tonverk. I mean, I'm a huge Analog Rhythm fanboy. I mean, you can't see it, but mine is right there. I think the Analog Rhythm is my favorite drum machine ever, bar none. And so you know, if you're not traveling, the reason why I don't have it in my live set is because it's too big to travel with. So if you're not traveling and you want to use a drum machine, I would recommend the Analog Rhythm 100% of the time. I absolutely love it. So let's see. Michael, what's going on? Does it have a pitch shifter global effect? So it does have transform and transpose, which I haven't gotten into yet, so I can't really show you how to do it, but you can transpose already, which is pretty cool. And then you can transform individual things. So you've got like velocity, randomize, ramp up, ramp down, that kind of stuff. So you can, but I'm not versed in it enough to show you yet. Let's see. You sold the Syntakt. Yes, I did. Maybe discover trying the gray OGs decades ago. Yeah. Didn't see in the video. Does it have control all? I don't think so, actually. No, I don't think it does, actually, have a control all. Which, again, less important when you've got these different effects buses and the master, because those, like for example, the master becomes a control all. You can route things through buses, and then each bus becomes a control all. So yeah, but no, I don't think it has that standard control all functionality. I don't think so. But the new launch control would be real nice with the Tonverk. Yeah, it would. I actually messed with that at KnobCon. It was very cool, like really well built. Typos, no worries. Yeah, another thing is I have the Noisite drop that I've been using for a few months now, and I'm excited to build a template for the Tonverk, because with the drop, you've got so many things that can be macros. Each knob can go to 8 different destinations. You've got a lot of different macro control. So with having so many effects, you could basically build multi-effects by building macros on the Tonverk, and you control the parameters of each one of those destinations. So like the curves and the, you know, are you increasing or decreasing the value? What are the minimum and maximum of the values? So a lot of what you would do inside the Octatrack to create a multi effect, you could do using the Tonverk with a lot of the effects here. So you could basically set up the buses to be different things, and then you can set that up as those knobs as multi effects using what's already in there. So I'm excited to get that set up because it's I think that's going to be an amazing pairing. See a lot of folks mentioning, what we got? Live looping for this box. Can you explain how that works traditionally? So this one does not live loop, but it's one of the things people like about the Octatrack. So I think that's why you're hearing a lot of it, is because I think a lot of people wanted this to be the Octatrack Mark III, and it's not. So they were wanting live looping. So you can resample with this, and you can assign that sample to another slot, and then you can sequence it. What is different is that the reason why the Octatrack can live loop is because it can time stretch. So if you take a loop and then it loads it onto another track, you can get it to play in time, and then you can just fade to it and you're playing the looped track. And if you change your tempo, if you change whatever, that looped track will change tempo with you. So it's possible to do looping that way. The Octatrack also has multiple recording buffers. So every track has a recording buffer. So you can record different things, and then you can play that recording on different tracks that are different from where it was recorded to. So that's another thing that makes it really unique and makes the live looping possible in that. So this does not do that. And I don't think that it will. I mean, it might, but they would have to do the time stretching thing first. Because right now it's not really built to deal with loops. It's built to deal with one shots or long samples, and you just can adjust like start point and end point. So it's not really set up to do with loops at the same time. Let's see, sorry, my camera is in the way of the chat here. Global compressor. Yeah, there's no global compressor routing with this, which is a shame, but it goes back to that same thing with the way the Detact and Digatone were before the latest versions of those things. So let's see here. So you can put on the different buses. So you've got pitch shifter, a comb filter, compressor, degrader, dirt shaper, filter bank, frequency warper, infinite flanger, low pass filter, panoramic chorus, phase 98, which I'm assuming is a phaser, saturator, delay, super void, reverb, and warble. So obviously with one of these being compressor, you could set up a bus to be a compressor, and then you could route things to that bus because every track has its own routing. So you can route each track to a different bus if you want to. And this comes back to one of those things where I would like to see bus routing from one to the other, because let's say you had, let's say bus one was a compressor and you routed a few things to it, and then you routed that to bus two with all of the rest of the things that weren't compressed, right? Then you could have that kind of mixed version. The other thing that's cool is that by routing it through a bus for the compressor, it allows you to be able to to kind of dial in the control of it a little bit better. You can also put a compressor on the mix, so on the main, if that's your thing. As most of you know, that's not my thing, but it's something that you could do with this also. So yeah, a lot of possibilities. Yesterday I was stuck to find a bridge on Syntactic Control, and bam, copy powder knife, superb bridge with sounds that saved on their own. Yeah, for sure. Those being able to save things is amazing. Let's see. Built-in engines, modulation for avoiding the need to kill an LFO. Yeah, I think that's great as well. That's something that's really cool on here, is being able to Get off the effects here. Okay. Being able to have different things that you can do with each individual engine. So depending on what the source is, so you've got like different functionalities with each thing within each engine. So, and one thing that I did mention as well, by the way, I forgot, is that very much like the Syntact and Digitact and Digatone 2 now, these can all be MIDI tracks as well. So you can set them up so that it's an audio track, a multi-sampled audio track, a track with subtracks, or a MIDI track. So this can still control other things. I know I didn't mention that. It's probably kind of obvious, but yeah. If you had to perform and could only choose a single box filled with your samples between Tonverk and Digitact 2, which would you choose? That's a tough question, not for the reason you would think. First and foremost, I don't like performing on one box because I think it's not a fun way to perform as a performer. And I also think it's not a fun performance to watch because the audience sees you touching the exact same buttons and knobs over and over and over and over and over and over again. And they have no idea what's going on. So in that case, you might as well just be playing something recorded, like a DJ set, because they're not seeing what you're doing. There's not any kind of like interaction. And also from the standpoint of a live performer, I like to interact with my gear a lot. So change things, shape sounds, do all that stuff. And in a single box, the only way to do that and have a lot of sound shaping possibility is to have a ton of menu diving. And I'm just not into that. So setting it up like that, I wouldn't do it as a first and foremost thing. Now, if it came down to it, to use one box to perform with, I would be torn between these two because I would say the Digitact 2 has more functionality for what I like to do. And it's a more refined product. So I would trust it more to play live if it was the only thing I was using to play live. With the Tonverk, a thing that is a huge deal for me is being able to have this filter on the master. And so at least you've got some sort of performance effect. And then you've also got buses that you can route as performance effects as well. So you could route things to a bus with a couple of effects. And if you, let's say you routed everything to bus 1 with 2 different effects on it, during your performance, you can go to bus 1 and use those effects as master performance effects. So, and you can't really do that with the Digitact. So it would be a hard choice, honestly. I think it's kind of, they're both different enough that they're each gonna have strengths and weaknesses. And it's not that I'm trying not to answer it. I just don't think I would do that in the first place because I'm not a one box kind of performer. So anyway, explaining live looping, you're welcome. Notice that there is an empty space in the compressor. I'm thinking that could be the sidechain. It could be. Yeah, I mean, if you go into, let's go to compressor. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, so you still have the same thing that you had in the Digitact 1, and let's see, yeah, there's not any way to set this up. Maybe, hold on. Yeah, so there's not a way to really, so I'll take a step back. This way is the way that the Digitact 1 and Digatone 1 were, which was that you have a sidechain, and like here it says main, you can decide what track or whatever you want to affect the sidechain, and then you've got a filter for what you can filter out about what you're getting from that individual thing. The problem is that then that effect is on your main, just like it was in the Digitact and Digatone. So if you're triggering it with your kick, like you normally would to get sidechain ducking, if you trigger it with your kick is still going through the compressor and through the main. So the more you jack up the threshold to get more of a duck, you're not ducking everything out of the way of the kick, you're ducking everything including the kick. And so then that's why for me it was never really functional. And yes, you can filter it out, but you're still going to get ducking on it. And it's like, it's just not very usable. So if they can make it so that you can route it the same way that you can route it on the new Digitech 2 and Digitone 2, that would be an amazing thing. Let's see where we at here. Yeah, I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, still new. There's a lot of things that I don't know about this. So anyway, compressor on the bus. Yes, let's see. Yeah, so there is a blank. So this one you can't have an input, which is unfortunate, right? But you do have the sidechain filter, which is kind of odd. So yeah, I agree with you. There's probably going to be some sort of functionality in there. That would make sense. What's your thoughts on the one boxes versus many? I was associated greater mastery and depth with a single box. Is that incorrect way to approach it? I mean, I don't think that there's one that's better than the other, and I wouldn't say that a performer is better or worse because they're using one box or many boxes. I think it comes down to personal preference and what you want to do. By going with one box, you're forcing yourself to menu dive. Unless you have a box that's knob per function, which means it can't do much because you can only have a certain number of knobs on the face of it. So in one way or another, if you're going to have a deep thing that can do a lot of things, it's going to have a bunch of menu diving in it, or it's going to be huge. So what I prefer to do is to use individual boxes for specific things in specific setups. So maybe I would use this as, a drum machine and some voices, or maybe I would route things into this and then I would run them all through the different effects buses and I would use it as an effects thing. But I wouldn't try to do it all at once because then you're just going menu, 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 menu. And for the audience, it gets really super boring because you're just like hunched over one machine doing this. And you're like here and here and here. And it's not really a performance at that point. You're only really performing for yourself. So it's one of the reasons why I love modulars, because it's knob per function. There's no menu diving and you can actually really get in there and do stuff. And for an audience perspective, they see you move this knob and they could hear something change. I turned this and I could hear something change. Where with this, on this page, this knob is my threshold for my compressor. But if I change tracks, now on this page, it's retrig. And now on this page, it's my start point. And now on this page, it's my filter cutoff. And on this page, it's my overdrive. So the audience is basically seeing me turn this one knob and they have no idea what goes along with that. So from a live performance standpoint, I've never been a fan of one box. It's just like the only way to have a single box that can do a lot of stuff is to have it be super menu divey, right? And I think if we go back to this conversation, again, it's going to sound like I'm just like sticking up for Elektron all the time, but one of the things I think they do well is they walk that line between depth of functionality and ease of workflow, and that's why they have multiple boxes. Because if they made any one box more deep, it would kneecap the workflow. All of a sudden it becomes menu, 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 menu. And it's like, what a pain. If you ever want to suffer this, use a Roland MC707. You will want to open a vein by the time you're done with that thing because it's got all this functionality and the screen is this big and you have one function knob. So it's like dive, 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 change one thing, back, 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 go down another menu, change one thing, back, 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 go down another menu, change one thing. It is a nightmare, right? So that's one extreme. My friend likes to call it a hostile workflow because he said it's working against you all the time. And I think with Elektron, I think they learned their lesson with the Octatrack in that they tried to do so much in one device, which they did, and it's why it's such an amazing device. But it's also the device that people most want to throw out the window when they're learning how to use it, because the workflow is hard because it does so much. And so to be able to walk that line between deep functionality and functional, fast, fluid, fun workflow, there's a fine line there. And I think seeing something like this is interesting because they're going down a really, really deep rabbit hole of routing and possibilities and multiple effects and subtracks and all that stuff. And they still need to keep a workflow that's fun to use, that doesn't get in the way of your creative process. So, so for me, I've never been a one box person because I think for me, it's way less fun, and for the audience, it's way less fun. And ultimately, that's what really matters. We're there to have a good time ourselves and make sure other people have a good time. And if you're just going to be, staring at a screen and not doing a lot of stuff, DJ. Bring a USB, load it into a CDJ, play your thing, and have a great time. But with that kind of one box performance, for me, it's not for me. It's just, I guess, a personal preference thing. Okay. All right. Let's see. Also, why am I sitting here with 4 electrons trying to find my single holy grail? There isn't one. So I will say, stop trying. Basically, what I'm saying is really like, for example, EasyBot's a great example because he's an Elektron guy, like a dedicated Elektron guy. And when you look at his setup, he's not doing it all in one box. Yeah, he could just play the Octatrack, but what you get the most out of is having a performance mixer / effects unit in the Octatrack, where you are playing a polyphonic FM and wavetable synth in the D-tone and a multi-track one-shot sample player in the D-tact. So then you've got all of your bases covered, and you can be adjusting drums while you're changing, filter position on this while you're doing a performance effect, because you're not trying, like, let me put it this way. I guess the easiest way to explain is when you use a single machine to perform with, you can only do anything that you want to do sequentially. You can't do things simultaneously. So if you want to adjust the filter on 2 different synths, you have to do them one after the other. You have to go to one synth, adjust the filter, go to another synth, adjust the filter. Whereas if you are playing with 2 different synths, you can have one on each page and you can adjust 2 filters at the same time. If you're playing with a modular, you can adjust 2 filters at the same time. So it allows you the ability to do that. And if you want to do 2 and quickly switch to 2 more, if you're playing a modular, you can do that. If you're playing 4 boxes, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4 really quick. You can do 2 and then 2. But if you're doing 4 different voices in a machine, you have to do 1, change voices, menu 1, change voices, menu 1, change voices, menu 1. And then all of a sudden you're way farther down the line in your track, right? So for me, that workflow doesn't work personally, but for some people it does. Like, I've seen people do amazing shows just on a single box, but it's not for me. It's not my preference. Okay. Let's see what's up, man. In Amsterdam, roughies. Amazing single box. Thanks. That's just the way I look at it. And I'm not, by the way, whenever I say any of this stuff, I'm not saying this is how you have to think. I'm just saying this is the way I approach it. And maybe that gives you an idea or not, or whatever. But yeah, it's the way I look at this stuff. But that's just me. Hostile workflow. Yeah. I wish I could take credit for that, but my friend Synth Dad coined that phrase, and it made me laugh so much that I use it all the time. So I'll be forever curious of the MC707 with how much I love my TR8S. Yeah, I mean, so the TR8S is another one of those that's really interesting. They did a much better job. So just think about the two. With an MC707, if I want to change a parameter of a sound, I have to go into that sound and change it. With the TR8S, as long as I've set it up on that faceplate, I've got immediate access to it. I have multiple faders, so I could push all 8 of them at the same time. Whereas in the MC707, I can't do those kind of things, right? I have to do things sequentially. So yeah, it's a weird workflow. Anyway, but if you think about the TR-8S, the reason why it's a much more friendly workflow to use live is because they've limited it. It's just a drum machine and sample player. And you've only got 3 parameters that you can adjust on the surface of it, plus volume. Those parameters are assignable, but assigning them is that same hostile workflow. You have to go down into the thing. So you have to pre-set up your whole show with what you're going to want to control on your controllers or on your knobs, and then you can control those live during the show. But without pre-setting that up, there's no way to do it. Like you can't go in and modify things on the fly, even in the TR-8S. So, agree 100%. Usually all functions are 2 or 3 hits away in parameters. Yeah, for sure. It's like trying to cook a complex menu with only 1 fire available. Totally. I'm a restaurant guy, so that means a lot to me. This is why Fader Fox stuff is nice, but more boxes is always better. Yeah, I mean, again, now if you're going to go the MIDI controller route, yeah, you can use a Fader Fox, or you can use the Launch Control XL, or you can use the Noisite Drop, or one of those, and all of a sudden, yeah, then you can control those things, but you're no longer playing the original box. And so at that point, it's like, okay, well, if you're just going to be using MIDI controllers, then why wouldn't you just bring a laptop and use a DAW and control it with MIDI controllers? You have way more versatility of synth sounds, of effects, of processing, of flexibility, of organization, of different tracks, of all kinds of stuff. So you get way more power out of a laptop if you're just going to go the MIDI controller route. So it's like I'm always like trying to get the best use out of what I can do. So for me, the best use of hardware is use it, like set it up to be able to be used in a way that's functional for you, and where you don't necessarily need other things to use it, I guess, if that makes sense. But anyway, I'm such a gentleman and patient. Goes at all subjects. Thanks, appreciate that. Glad you guys are learning something. That's the whole reason why I do these things, just to, as Ricky says, share the knowledge. But yeah, anyway, so just a couple more quick things about the Tonverk that I think are really interesting to note, that we hadn't really talked about. And again, I'm not going to go down those traditional paths yet, but I love the ability to use individual tracks for multiple things so that you can save your space. If you start writing, like for example, the way I started with this thing that's right here is I started off just writing drums, and I was like, okay, and I said, okay, on this track, maybe I want to add a little bit of reverb to put everything in a space, and a little delay for some interest. Right? So I've still only used 1 track, and I still have other slots available. So this is all still only track 1. So I love this for like laying down something really, really, really quick. But then I was like, okay, now I want something that I've got a little bit more control over. So then I'm going to switch to a track that has a synth voice on it. So I'm going to actually change this. Change this to a single player. So then you've got a bunch more control over this sound, right? So, yes, you have the ability to sequence it, so I'm just gonna leave the sequence as it is right now. But being able to go in, you can pitch it, you can change your start points, which is great. So using and then being able to go in and having the two filters like you normally have on the Elektron devices now. So if you said, okay, I want to clean this low end up a little bit, I'm going to filter out some of the low end just so that it's not messing with me at all. Again, having individual mute controls or the individual channels is pretty cool as well. And then we can again go back into this idea that we've got being able to have an effect on the master track. So we changed that earlier to compressor. If we go back to a filter. Okay, so now we're in a place where we've got the ability to add in some sort of a performance effect, which you don't have in the other boxes. And again, we've got the ability to now move this. Well, let's just mess with this a little bit. So on this individual track, so actually I'm going to mute the drums. So on this track right here, we have our regular effects. So with these effects, so now we can add individual effects per, like insert effects as well. So I can insert, well, let's see, let's do comb filter. So, and then within each of these new effects, you've got some really cool, interesting things you can do with this. So this is, what's this one, the degrader. So then you can go in and change things like bit reduction, overdrive, sample rate reduction. This thing called drop, which it basically reduces the bits and then it'll drop sometimes out. lot of interesting stuff that you can do with sound design stuff, using all of these new effects. So being able to insert effects plus your kind of traditional send effects. So you still have delay and reverb and chorus. So again, this is all still just 2 tracks out of 8. And the second track only has 4 steps on it, right? So you've got a track that has drums, and then you've got a second track that just has 4 steps. But then what this is really for, and it's what I really love about this is it's very much the way I use my modular, where I'll have relatively simple voices and simple sequences, and then I'll go through different effects. I have different insert effects, and then different send effects that allow me to get different sounds. And this is the same here. So there's only 4 steps, but because it's going through a chorus, a delay, a reverb, that destroyer thing, whatever it's called, it allows you to do different stuff with it. And now we haven't even talked about routing this to other stuff, although it is going through one of the buses. But then this could go through the sends, and it can go through the mix, which again, if we go to our mix track, mix track. Right, so again, it gives you just a ton of flexibility. And I think, for me, that's what I think the Tonverk is for. I think it's for flexibility. It's for the ability to do things in a different way rather than, it was funny for me when this first came out the first day, everybody was like, is it like this device or is it like this device? And we're so anxious and so eager to pigeonhole something into what it is and what it isn't. Being able to say, this isn't like other devices. Yeah, it's got an Elektron sequencer and it looks kind of the same and the workflow's similar, but it's very different. And again, I'm just talking about the workflow of using it. We're not talking even about polyphonic multi-sampling, all of that stuff, which is great. And that's really what it's for. But I'm showing you that just in the use workflow, it's totally different from any of the other boxes. So it's not like a this or like a that. It's like its own thing. It is its own thing. And maybe that thing is great for you and maybe it's not, but it is what it is, right? So it's your own thing. All right, let's see here. Play differently. Model 1 is great performance-wise. Yes, it is, but it's gigantic and you can't travel with it. So if you're gonna actually be performing, you have 2 options. You either haul that big monster around or you're a big enough act that you demand that there be one there on your rider, which good luck with that. So that's why for me, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff, but performing live at home with stuff that you never have to carry anywhere for me is not a thing. So being able to have things that I can move around and travel with, and particularly things that I can take in carry-on luggage is really super important for me. So that's kind of led to the design of my whole live setup. So anyway, yes, you can sequence the effects tracks as well, which I haven't even gone down that road yet, but all of so each one of the buses and sends and all of that, each have sequencers on them. So you can sequence those and you can parameter lock when you want different things to happen, just like you can with all the other stuff. So again, opening up the ability to take one sound with some really simple sequences and making it kind of go all over the place into all kinds of crazy cool stuff is, I think, for me, what this device is for, right? Because for me, it's not for playing polyphonically. That's not for me, but it is that thing. But for me, it's going to be for routing things and being really creative with the sounds that I can make and the way that I can play it. So, sounds cool. Thanks. It's trouble when while the live, you're looking on the Thomann website. Yeah. Seems in some way deeper than most. Yes, it's way deeper than the other devices. I would say, with the exception of the Octatrack, this is now the deepest device that Elektron has, with the exception of the Octatrack. Just again, like I was saying at the beginning of the stream, because what the other ones do is they say, here's the workflow, learn it, get good at it, and have fun with it. With this one, it's like, here are your options, create your workflow in whatever way suits you, and then use that. So yeah, it's very, very different in that mentality. Hey, from Melbourne, what's going on? A Monday morning, that's right, it's Monday morning for you. It's 4:15 in the afternoon on Sunday for me, so. Let me know if you guys have other questions before we call it a day today. I just wanted to walk you around the Tonverk, give you some ideas about what it is and what it isn't, and hopefully put things into perspective a little bit about it so that it's not, I feel like people, it's with any device that comes out in this day and age, it's not just this one, it's every device. People either love it or hate it. And it's either the best or the worst, or it's great or it sucks. Like there's never a, wow, that's cool and creative and interesting, and I could use this to make music in a different way that might be creatively inspiring to me. And people are like, but is it an MPC or is it an Octatrack? Well, it's not either. It's its own thing. You know, and it doesn't have to be, and I don't think it should be either of those things. Those things are those things, and they exist for a reason. Now, this is going to exist for its own reason. So whatever you want to do with it. It's deep, but not more difficult to master. I think you just hit that on the head, because that's really, I think, where Elektron is going with this. I think that's where Elektron is going in the modern era, is they want things to be deep with functionality, but without sacrificing the ease of use and workflow. Like, if you know how to use one Elektron box today, you can get another one and you know how to use it right away, right? So it's that's something they have going for them. It's great. I remember when I got the Subtrack, I was making music on it in like 10 seconds because I've used the other boxes for years. And it was the same with this. I got this and I was like, this one, it's a bit different because there's a lot new here that doesn't even exist in the other boxes. So that's why this one is a bit more complicated to learn, but not very. I mean, it's all pretty well labeled and laid out and pretty simple. Like, it's pretty easy to understand. It's just a matter of building up muscle memory about where things are in the machine. But yeah, the workflow, I think, is key. So that balance between depth of capability and smoothness of workflow, I think, is key. Creative possibilities through routing. Yeah, 100%. Beat per track is cool. I don't know what that means. In my opinion, it is not only linked to the device, but what you already have. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. That it's, whenever I'm looking at something new, and I look at it for two different things. Is it like more fun, more interesting, more inspiring than the other stuff that I have? Then it's a good one for me. And then the second one is, does it do something that I can't do with my other stuff, or does it do something better that my other stuff does, but this does the better version of it? And in this case, the sound design, effects routing, using effects in sound design, this does better than the other devices. The use of the tracks, I think with the Subtracks, I think this does better. Obviously the polyphony and this multi-sampling, which is not a big deal for me, but it definitely does that better. It's not as simple as the Digitact. It's not a synth. So like that instantly makes it different from the Digitone and the Analog 4 and the Subtrack and whatever. This is not a synth. So, okay, that's another thing. It's a sampler. So yeah, I mean, it has its own strengths and weaknesses like anything else, but I think it's just important to realize it's its own thing. And it's not trying to be a different Elektron box or a replacement of an Elektron box or an all-in-one Elektron box or even a replacement for your MPC or a replacement for your OPXY or a replacement for your, I don't know, MPC Live or your name an all-in-one, your MC707 if you're a glutton for punishment. It's not that. It's its own thing. And if it's a thing that works for you, get it. And if it's not, save the money and get the thing that is. Like, as I've said a lot, we are lucky to live in an era where there's a workflow, there's gear, there's stuff for everybody. So if something's not for you, move on. Find the thing that is for you. I'm feeling like this is going to be for me, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I don't need a lot of the things that are not working on this right now or that are buggy. I know that Matthew in his stream found a bunch of things that were buggy. Those things don't affect me because that's not how I'm using this. But if that is how you would use it, then that's definitely a consideration for you. Okay. Do you think it's possible Subtrack gets a stereo sampler? They don't have a sampler in every box because not every box is a sampler. That's like saying, why does a Moog Sub 37 not have a sampler? Or why does a Prophet 6 not have a sampler? Or why does I don't know. They're not samplers. They're synths. And the Subtrack is a synth. And it's a synth with a sequencer. But I think that anytime something comes in a box, we think it should be in everything, but it's not in everything, right? It's, each thing can be its own, it can have its own strengths. And so I would be surprised if the Subtrack ever got a sampler. I mean, I don't see any reason for it. The way you get a sampler with a Subtrack is you put a Digitact next to it. That's like saying, if only the Digitact would just get synth engines. If only the Digitact would just get a whatever. Well, it's not. It's a sampler. It's not a synth. This is not a synth. It's a sampler. And so that's why it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, yeah. Let's see, OPXY is such a toy compared to Tonverk, but Tonverk also needs a ton of work. Yes, I don't think the Tonverk needs a ton of work. I think it's pretty awesome the way it is. I think it has room to expand, which I think would be great. And I think it has a few bugs that they're currently working out. So that should be another few weeks, couple weeks, whatever, away. But I think it's great the way it is. I've been having a great time with it since I got it. So yeah, I think it's great the way it is. And as far as the OPXY being a toy, I don't know. I mean, I was skeptical. I have never liked a product that Teenage Engineering has put out. And when I got my hands on the OPXY, I really enjoy it. I still have it. I take it on trips with me for messing around with. It's really cool to sketch on and to make, quick stuff and make interesting things fast and kind of jam out. And it's the very best as far as the size to functionality ratio and as far as the battery life. I have yet to see another device besides my phone that runs for as long as the OPXY. So again, everything has their strengths and weaknesses, but yeah, this isn't that. Subtrack has PCM sampled in some machines. Well, yeah, but that doesn't make it a sampler. Using a sample as a sound source, it does not make it a sampler. Being able to, the thing that's going to be a challenge with that is a lot of things are routed a certain way already. And so to be able to add in a sampler, I think would not necessarily be the best use of space. And why does it need a sampler? It's got 12 tracks of synthesis. So if you want a sampler, I would say put a sampler next to it. Just like I would say, if you have a Digitact and you want a synth, put a synth next to it rather than having to make one thing do everything. But anyway, Digitact simply needs the Tonverk crossfade for loops. Yeah, ton of work. Hey, what's going on? Blue Nautilus, good to see you. Are you in Bristol still for Machina Bristronica? Yeah, check it out. Does the USB-C power connection seem to be robust? Yeah, interesting thing about this USB-C power connection is it has a thing to screw in. If you look, it's got, you actually screw it into the device, which I was so happy to see, because whenever things have USB-C power, I'm always worried that it's going to fall out, because USB-C is like the worst connection as far as staying in. And so the fact that this screws in, I think is great, because that way as it's moving around on your table, if you're playing live or if you're moving stuff, it's not going to come undone. So it's actually screwed in. You can't pull it out without unscrewing it. So it's pretty cool. Maybe I'll just get 2 Digitac 2s and a mixer. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, or you could go like Dave Meck style, the way he used to play, where he had a DJ mixer, and on one side he had a Digitact and a Digiton, and the other side he had a Digitact and a Digiton. These two would play a track, then he would crossfade to these two, and it was just like playing with CDJs. So you could do that workflow too. Hey, what's going on, Herbie? Good to see you. Been loving the Tonverk so far. Yeah, me too. Sound design, effects routing. Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I'm feeling it. Still in Bristol. How's Bristol? I got a bit of FOMO. I wish I was there with you guys. It looks like it's a ton of fun. Hopefully next year. So yeah, Bristol looks amazing. But anyway, hopefully next year. That's my plan. I was going to try to go this year because last year it was the week before ADE. So I was like, oh, I'll extend. And this year ADE is 2 weeks later and Bristol was a week earlier. So I couldn't make it work out. So hopefully next time. But yeah. Cool. Well, I think we're going to call it a day there. Thank you guys very much for tuning in, for joining me today, for spending your Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, or Monday morning, depending on where in the world you are, with this. And yeah, if you have any other questions about the Tonverk, just put them in the comments on the video once this gets posted up as a video. And yeah, we will. I'll try to do my best to answer them as I'm learning bit by bit of this thing. I'm still learning it, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, and then the next is get my travel rig ready to go. I'll be in Berlin I have shows on the 17th and 18th of October in Berlin, and then I have shows on the 22nd and 23rd in Amsterdam for ADE. So if you're around for any of those, definitely swing by. Would love to see you. And yeah, thanks. It's been fun, and I will see you